Welcome to Marketing MASH, brought to you by themarketingscope.com.
Welcome to the Marketing MASH. I'm Eric Vidal, Editor and Chief Content Officer at The Marketing Scope. Today, our guest is Jack Kosakowski.
Woo!
Guru. No, I'm kidding. Jack is a social selling expert. He's actually a contributing writer and a friend of the Marketing Scopes. And you actually have a new role where you're heading up the U.S. presence of a European agency called the Creation Agency.
Yeah, so I'm the global head of B2B social sales strategy. So working with sales teams to kind of incorporate digital and social into their sales process, right? Not eliminating the traditional email and phone, just trying to help make the sales a little bit more buyer focused, 5x value versus ask, right? Give on the front end and kind of earn the right to their business. But on top of that, we do social marketing in a disruptive manner. I always say it's like marketing automation. Everything we do is driven through marketing automation and data, right? Because that's the missing link in marketing today. Is we're doing all these channels, but are all these channels funneling into each other and speaking and stuff? So that's what we do.
We'll get to that maybe in another video. But we have you here today because I want to talk to you about how I position you as a leading salesperson, so I think you fit into this category, but how leading sales and marketing professionals master their industry's content. And the example I'll give is I get called on all the time by salespeople, and nothing drives me crazier than when the salesperson's wanting to talk about X, and they don't even really know the industry. Because they've only been there 2, 3, 4 months, maybe they've been there 2 years, but I know more about it sometimes than they do. And I know you have a lot of passion and about this topic, and you have some best practices you could share. Can you talk to us about this?
Yeah, so I always like to give kind of the beat up example with millennials. Sorry for using that phrase. But millennials are becoming pretty heavy in the sales profession, right? So you've got a lot of millennials coming in, whether they're in an SDR role or biz dev, whatever that may be, and they're being put on the phone to call high-level executives, right? And to convince an executive that the executive needs to give them their time, right? And obviously ensuing that they need to give them their business. And they're giving this value prop, whatever that is, 30-second elevator pitch. But sales has evolved. It's way deeper than that now, right? You get an executive on the phone who's made millions of dollars and had a lot of success, probably owned a company or two. They need to know that you're more than just a salesperson, right? They need to know that you're going to give them some kind of information, whether that's in 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, I don't care. That you're going to give them some information that's going to show them that you're a true expert and that it's worth giving you their time, right? Because the most valuable thing that any business owner has, or anybody in an executive leadership role or decision maker role, is time.
Yeah, but I mean, there's two ways from my perspective. I'm curious to hear yours, but one is it's the whole social selling, right? And so it's sharing content about your industry that's relevant and that can educate people. But it's not just that.
It's deeper than that.
It's more than sharing it. It's understanding it, reading it, embracing it. So the example I'll give is Daniel Newman, my business partner, who is a contributing writer for various magazines. Ours is one, but he talks to a lot of experts. And the other day, he talked to 2 different experts that are in the trenches type experts, in the weeds. They know this topic, and he was able to keep up with them. And there was one case where I felt like he knew more than the other guy, just because, and he's not as hands-on on that topic, but because he's doing research, digging deep on that industry content.
Yeah, so he's a great example, right? So there's a lot of, it's every day we all have different roles, right? But that doesn't mean that we are, experts in everything that we do, right? Like we don't all necessarily have to do something to know it really well, especially in the industry that you're in. So example, if I'm calling on a CEO at a high level that's had a lot of success and been doing something for a long time, and I'm new to a role, or 1, 2 years, even 5 years in a sales role could be pretty early in some of these more complex sales. So if I'm in the weeds with the industry content, and I know when a new article comes out and I'm consuming that information, giving the outlook of, what 2018 is going to look like for the industry, where technology is going to be, the do or die, right? What's do or die for these executives that they need to know that they don't know because they don't have the time, right? They're in the weeds with their business. They are looking at salespeople now as trusted advisors to say, listen, here's what I've been reading, here's what people have been talking about, and here's what I see, and then being able to back it up by citing different sources and telling the buyer, where did you get this information? That's what an executive or decision maker wants to hear. Yeah. They don't want to hear about your product. They want to hear about the industry, right? And later get into your product. But if you consume and know your industry content so well that you know the now, the past, the present, and the future of what's happening and what's going to help move the needle or what's going to stop the needle from moving, that's where executives start to really put you into that next level of bucket, and they say, okay, this is somebody that knows their stuff, and that might even, there's even instances where they might not even be buying your product, but they're buying your knowledge, your brain, what you know, because they know that yes, your product can fix a pain, but even more valuable, you can stop pain from happening because they know that that's what you are, the expert or the trusted advisor, and they can count on you in the process of not only with their product, but in the process of their business and your business relationship.
Jack, those are great examples. And from a sales perspective, you're right, because you're the expert, you're educating, and you're leveraging that expertise now from a conversational standpoint. It's one-on-one. Let's talk about marketers. You want to be conversational, you want to be educational, but it's not just one-on-one. You want that tone to be one-on-one, but it's really to a mass, right? And so to a larger audience. What are some examples that you can give in how you've seen marketers do it well?
Well, and that's interesting that you say that. Like, is it to a mass audience? I mean, yes, content goes out, but I mean, kind of the new way of content marketing, right, is being able to speak one-to-one, right? And I think that this is where understanding and mastering your industry content really comes into play. Because if you want to know what's valuable to an audience or what people really want to hear, how do you know that, right? And how can you write about something if you don't know everything that's been being written about it, everything that's working and not working with content, and what's not out there, right? Because what most content marketers are doing today, which is killing me, and it's just, they're wasting people's time because what they're doing is they're writing about a topic. Yeah, it might be a hot topic because the data tells you that, but they're writing about the same exact thing that everybody else is, right? 5 ways to do this, 5 ways to do that. It's like, well, yes, but I've already read these 5 ways. Yeah, you might have worded something, but what that tells me is that the content marketer doesn't know their industry content that well, and it's really just throwing together content for the purpose of having content. And that's got to stop. How can you talk one-to-one to a buyer and know what people want at the decision maker level if you're not consumed with your industry content and what people are writing about, what the top authors are writing about, what the top bloggers,
But even then, the content has got to be different for the stage of the cycle that they're in, right? I mean, if it's top of the funnel, it's got to be very educational, and you also, like you said, it's got to be different. It can't be like the 10 other people that wrote the same piece in the last week.
And I think that in sales and marketing, we're both trying to do the same thing, right? Like in sales, we're having a conversation to become the trusted advisor, right? I'm having a one-to-one conversational. In marketing, we're doing the same thing, right? But we're talking to them in a digital fashion, right? So if you think about it, same thing, conversation, one-on-one conversation, one-on-one conversation. One is in digital form and one is in human conversational form. We're both trying to achieve the same objective, to get the reader to say, wow, this is somebody that's given me a ton of value that I look at as a trusted advisor, because in marketing, you got to get people to come back, right? Yeah. It's not just to read it and consume it. It's got to be so good that you can, over time, make them crave the next piece of content because of the value. And the only way you get that value is knowing what people want. Yeah. And you can only know that by going out and reading and consuming mass amounts of industry content and staying afloat of everything that comes out that's new and the hottest in your industry.
Especially in your space, yes. Right?
And so how do you get there? My advice would be consume 1 hour to 2 hours of content per day. That might sound crazy to some. Well, I don't have the time to do that. Well, you do though. If you're traveling, be be looking on your mobile, reading articles, find out what the resources are from a content marketing perspective in your industry, right? And that takes time, but you'll find the channels. For me, I know that there's only certain channels that have the high level industry content. They have the quality that is worth my time.
Well, so I see two things. This is what I do, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I mean, one is I do what you just said, but the other one is it's the content, it's the conversations. Like I ask people that I know in those respective areas that are either just a mid-level manager in the trenches or somebody who's very high up that still is an expert in that space. I'm always asking them questions. I'm having a conversation because I want to hear their insights. And it's not always just the best practices, it's also what not to do.
Well, and I think that this is where brands need to leverage the power of influencer marketing, right? And when I say that, I don't say that from a vanity metric standpoint. I'm not saying like, that just because a list comes out that's an influencer, but you need to find the influencers in your space that are really, really smart, right? That really get what's going on. They are ahead of everybody else. I'll give you an example. Seth Godin. I'm a huge Seth Godin fan. The reason I'm a huge Seth Godin fan is because I read his content, and to me, it sounds like he's speaking 5 years in the future about what's going to happen, right?
But in a very simplistic,
yes,
easy to understand
that's
way.
Now, right? So you've got to find your influencers, but here's the thing, you've got manufacturing, maybe you're in manufacturing, right? Well, that's a pretty laggard industry, but I can tell you that there are bloggers out there and that there are industry experts that are writing content. There are 3 or 4 different content marketing channels that are giving the information you need. You've just got to find, put the time in it and use the right tools to be able to find that information and make sure that you're the first one consuming. And then the next step, right, is sharing.
Sharing. And then hopefully commenting and then writing your own content and what have you, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's where social selling comes in, right? So if you want to kind of take consumption.
I knew we'd end up coming back to social selling, damn it.
So let me give you this circle, right? So the full circle is, it starts with consumption, because you've got to consume, you've got to understand what the best content is. And then here's where you become a trusted advisor from a social selling standpoint, is now you read 5 articles, but you're only going to share 1 because you know that the other 4 there's nothing special in there. But since you know your industry content so well, you know that 1 is the missing piece, right? It's the gem that everybody in your audience wants. And if you can do that over and over and over, but where the missing link is, most people don't know that you have to consume a lot of content to find that piece. So it all starts with consuming and then sharing and understanding what to share, what your audience is craving to read. So
the tip is, if you know that Jack's sharing your content, that's a good sign, right?
I will tell you that I have a rule. I don't share anything because it's a friend or having a big influencer network. Lots of people want me to share their stuff, but I will tell you, I will read it. If it doesn't fit my criteria, I don't think that it's the high quality that I need for my audience, I won't share it, right? Because that's how I've built my audience. Taking and understanding content and only sharing the stuff that I feel my audience can't live without. It's going to be valuable to their personal and professional life.
I think what we need is a little logo, a little Jack certified on pieces of content.
Yeah, well.
That's maybe in 2017. Well, hey, thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope everyone took something away from this. I know I did, and feel free to comment on the comment section in our videos. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thanks, Jack.
That's it for this episode of Marketing Mash. You can share your thoughts by following us on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast to keep up with the show. And of course, you can always find us by visiting themarketingscope.com.